This rather old sci-fi film Lifeforce is hailed by many fans as a cult classic of the 1980s, thanks to its wildly imaginative ideas that were ahead of its time. French actress Mathilde May plays an alien succubus, appearing fully nude in the film. One of its writers was Dan O'Bannon, who later also co-wrote the Alien and Predator series. In London, the Space Research Centre launched the spacecraft Churchill to track the orbit of Halley's Comet. But when Churchill reached its planned route, it suddenly received a radar signal from another sector, and the source was hidden at the front of the comet. After scanning and testing, they discovered the signal came from a colossal object, about 24,000 kilometers long and 3 kilometers high, looking very much like a derelict spacecraft. Commander Carlson wanted to study the structure of this vessel, but Halley's Comet's orbit takes 76 years, and if he missed this chance, he would have to wait another 76 years. So even though he couldn't be sure the alien ship was safe, Carlson decided to lead his crew inside. The ship's surface was full of scars and dents, signs of serious damage that showed it had been drifting here for a long time. The passages inside looked like organic arteries, and at the end of them was a massive control chamber where thousands of bat-like creatures floated in midair. But these bat creatures had long been dead, their bodies dried up and brittle like husks. Carlson thought about bringing one of the bats back for research, but suddenly a door opened at the far end of the chamber, blasting out a dazzling light. The crew felt it was too dangerous and wanted to retreat back to Churchill, but Carlson ordered them to hold their positions. When the ship showed no more signs of activity, he boldly led his crew into the light. Behind the light was a strange chamber, and inside were 3 fresh human corpses, completely unclothed, lying as if in crystal coffins in hibernation. Among them, the woman was breathtakingly beautiful, like an angel descended to earth.
They seem to be in some sort of suspended animation or sleep.
Hold up, we're coming down.
One crew member looked at her face and suddenly felt dazed, as if hypnotized. They carried the bat and all 3 corpses back aboard Churchill. But 30 days later, the Space Research Center on Earth lost all contact with Churchill. Through observatories, they noticed Churchill had drifted off course, something that normally could be corrected manually, yet no one on board seemed to be doing it. So another spacecraft was dispatched to intercept. They soon found the disabled Churchill and easily connected the docking passage. But when they opened the hatch, the interior was charred with fire damage. A crewman climbed up to the top deck to inspect.
They're all dead.
And it was filled with charred corpses. Almost everyone on board the Churchill was gone, and the crewmen could only take the tapes. But strangely, the 3 coffins stored in the tug bay were still intact, and the people inside remained as strikingly beautiful as before. Bukovsky at the research center analyzed the material of the coffins, realizing it was neither crystal nor metal, not even an organic substance. More precisely, it was a non-material entity, and the coffins could be older than humanity itself. The research team considered dissecting the bodies, but Dr. Fallada rejected the proposal because he could not be certain the beings inside were truly dead. That night, a researcher entered the operating room where the girl's coffin was kept. When Bukovsky awoke from sleep, he saw on the monitor that the girl had removed the man's helmet, and then they began to kiss. Bukovsky rushed toward the operating room, unaware that blue energy waves had already filled the chamber. By the time he opened the sealed doors, the researcher had been reduced to a dried corpse, and the energy had faded. The girl had awakened, and instead of leaving, she slowly walked toward Bukovsky, who, entranced by her beauty, let her control him just like the researcher. Luckily, Fallada caught sight of this on the monitors and quickly rushed in with guards. But when they arrived, only Bukovsky remained, and the girl had vanished. Fallada immediately phoned the guards captain to seal all exits, yet they underestimated her. She moved effortlessly through the facility, reaching the ground level and stepping out toward the main hall. Believing she was harmless, the guards tried to coax her back to the lab, but with just a lift of her hand, one guard choked as if strangled, while the captain was shocked unconscious. When Fallada rushed up in the elevator, all he saw were shattered glass doors and the figure of the girl disappearing into the night. The military, alerted to the disaster, dispatched Colonel Kane from intelligence to take over. When Kane saw the researcher drained into a dried corpse, he was in disbelief. He thought it was just a bizarre murder case and began interrogating Bukovsky. Bukovsky explained the girl came from Churchill, that she killed the researcher, and that she even spoke English. He added that the events on Churchill were equally strange. When he checked the tapes, they were intact outside, but all the data inside had been wiped clean. The escape pod was missing, and the charred bodies were unrecognizable, making it impossible to confirm if anyone had survived. What puzzled him most was that the fire had been triggered by the oxygen system, yet the beings in the coffins were completely unharmed. So he had studied the material of the coffins. At this moment, Kane realized things were far more terrifying than he had imagined. Actually, Falada already had a theory. He believed that life force was a kind of energy that could be preserved, and that once the life force was lost, it would lead to death. And that girl had the ability to absorb life force. She absorbed all of the guard's life force and part of Bukowski's, allowing her to gain new life even after death. This meant she was not human at all, but an alien being that fed on human life force. As Bukowski and Kane discussed this, the other two aliens suddenly awoke. They did not know how to dodge bullets, and in a hail of gunfire, they were destroyed. The research team prepared to dissect the dried corpse of the guard, who had been dead for nearly 2 hours. Suddenly, the corpse reanimated, and his eyes locked onto the surgeon. The doctor, as if under a spell, walked toward the guard without control. The doctor was drained into a husk, while the guard transformed back into a young, handsome man. Fortunately, he showed no aggression, and Falada ordered the soldiers to restrain him. The anesthetist immediately injected him with a sedative, and the group dragged him into an isolation cell. Seeing this, Falada worried the dried corpses could spread like a plague. But bad news came quickly. Police found a dried corpse in Hyde Park. It was a blonde, naked girl, yet she was not the alien woman. The witness said he had seen her with a dark-haired girl, but half an hour later, the blonde was dead, and the dark-haired girl had disappeared. It seemed the alien girl had not only found clothes, but also changed her appearance. 2 hours later, the guard inside the isolation cell suddenly writhed in agony. He clung to the bars, hungrily staring at Falada and the others outside. Moments later, he convulsed violently and collapsed. It turned out that once the dried corpse returned to living form, it had to absorb life energy every 2 hours. Without it, their bodies grew fragile, and with just a touch, they would crumble into dust. The doctor who had turned into a dried corpse proved this as well. He hit the isolation net and exploded into a cloud of dust right in front of Falada. The blonde girl met the same fate. At this time, Bukowski received a phone call. Detectors in the lab had tracked an unknown object. They suspected it was Churchill's escape pod entering the atmosphere, landing in Texas. That night, they found the pod, but the survivor inside was not an alien. It was Carlson. Carlson was brought before Bukowski, and he explained that after storing the coffins and the bat, they had intended to return to Earth. But on the way back, disaster struck. First, the ship's control console was destroyed. At the time, only the communications officer and Carlson were in the control room. Carlson suspected the officer, but the man was weak and confused, and the next day he became a dried corpse. Then the rest of the crew died one after another, leaving only Carlson alive. He believed the beings inside the coffins had caused the disaster. Not wanting it to reach Earth, he changed Churchill's course. He then opened all the oxygen valves and set the bat's corpse on fire. As the flames raged, he fled in the escape pod. The terrifying part was that the girl had drained all his colleagues, and part of him still wanted to stay, drawn to her with fatal attraction. That night, Carlson was placed in a room full of monitors to rest, but he was tormented by nightmares. In the dream, they were intimate, and the girl taught him to absorb his own life force. When he awoke, he realized with horror that it was not a dream. The girl had a telepathic link with him, entering his thoughts. Falada decided to use this bond against her, hypnotizing Carlson so he could find her in his mind. Carlson succeeded. He discovered the girl had taken a new body, but the host's original identity was not erased, only put into deep sleep. She avoided drawing attention by not killing constantly, instead seeking men and taking only small amounts of energy. At that moment, she targeted a man driving a car. Carlson saw the vehicle model and license plate. Kane launched a search based on the details. While waiting, Bukowski had an idea. The alien girl's kind resembled the legends of vampires. They lived in coffins, fed on humans. If vampires could be slain with silver, perhaps these beings could too. Falada happened to have a sword. He took samples of the alien's tissue and began researching how to kill them. Meanwhile, Kane traced the girl's new host identity, a nurse at a psychiatric hospital. Kane and Carlson hurried there, but the girl had already left the nurse's body, and the nurse remembered nothing. Carlson was forced to use deep memory recovery, forcibly entering her mind. He finally uncovered clues about the girl's new host, a large, overweight, white-haired man with a birthmark on his face. Dr. Armstrong, the head of the hospital, recognized the description as a child killer kept in solitary confinement. The killer had the mind of a 4-year-old and could not speak. Carlson suggested hypnotizing him, and Armstrong called for the anesthetist. The anesthetist prepared the drugs, opened the confinement room door, and they all went inside. Then Kane snatched the anesthetist's syringe, ready to act. It turned out the girl had transferred into Armstrong. When Armstrong had patted Carlson's shoulder earlier, Carlson sensed her presence and laid a trap to capture him. The girl was trapped in Armstrong's body. To speak with her, Carlson had to hypnotize Armstrong and call forth her consciousness.
What do you want from me?
I love you.
Only then did Carlson finally learn why he was so obsessed with her. But Carlson was more desperate to know where the girl's true body was hidden, and he screamed at her like a madman. The girl stopped speaking, only luring him closer for a kiss, and suddenly blue energy surged wildly through the room. Kane was caught off guard and hurled backward. He scrambled to his feet, injected 2 vials of sedative into Armstrong's body, and the blue energy vanished instantly. The girl had no time to escape Armstrong's body, but Carlson trembled in terror, declaring that the spread had already begun and it was too late to stop. The girl had deliberately drawn them away from London. On the plane back to London with Armstrong, Kane received a call from Falada. He had discovered that the other 2 aliens had not died. They had only pretended to be killed, then possessed 2 soldiers, transforming them into their own kind. This was different from ordinary dried corpse victims. The aliens could not leave the soldiers' bodies, and Falada used this to his advantage, killing one of them. The method was simple. Stab a leaded metal rod 2 inches below the heart, into the energy center. Hearing this, the girl inside Armstrong panicked. The moment she left his body, Carlson sensed her true form was in London. Overwhelmed, he broke down and revealed his secret, that it was Carlson himself who had destroyed the console and tapes aboard Churchill. It was also he who first gave in to her temptation. He had opened her coffin and exchanged energy with her. But instead of killing him, she wanted him to live. At that moment, the pilot received news. In just one night, London had completely collapsed. Energy surges and explosions shook the city. The streets swarmed with dried husks feeding on Lifeforce, while panicked crowds fled. The horror spread faster than any plague. Even the Prime Minister had been drained. Kane had planned to seek the Prime Minister's help, but now he could only flee with Carlson. They entered London, which was under a complete lockdown. The army believed it to be a plague, with a 2-hour incubation period, but the speed of transmission was uncontrollable. The commander had already requested nuclear weapons, awaiting approval. Meanwhile, above London in Earth's orbit, a colossal alien ship hovered, a massive collector. A blue beam shot skyward from London, connecting directly to the collector, and within the beam were tens of thousands of human souls. The male alien harvested life force from humans and transmitted it through the girl to the collector. To end the disaster, they had to find the girl and kill her. Even knowing it was a one-way mission with only 90 minutes until nuclear launch, Carlson charged into London. Kane believed Carlson was heading for the research center and requisitioned a military vehicle to follow. When he drove into the streets of London, what he saw was a scene of living hell. After a harrowing fight through the chaos, Carlson reached his destination, but it was not the research center. It was a church filled with corpses. At this moment, Kane had just arrived at the research center. Everyone there had been killed, and only Falada had survived, appearing completely normal. Falada explained his research. When the aliens bonded with victims through telepathy, the victims could maintain life even after death. It turned out Falada himself had already been converted. Kane seized Falada's leaded weapon and rushed toward the church where the girl was. Inside the church, Carlson had already met her, once again falling under her spell. At the doorway, the male alien urged Kane to join them, but Kane had no time for words. He drove the weapon straight into the alien's energy center, and in an instant, the alien revealed its true form, a gigantic bat, before crumbling to ash. Kane retrieved the weapon and rushed inside, heading for the blue beam at the heart of the church. At the source of the beam, Carlson questioned the girl. It turned out that Carlson was of the alien race, but having lived among humans for many years, he did not want to destroy this blue planet. Carlson caught the weapon that Kane threw down and thrust it through the girl and himself with a single strike. The blue beam vanished, severing the collector's link to Earth. But Carlson and the girl did not die. They returned to the alien ship, carrying the harvested life energy, and departed Earth, disappearing into the depths of the universe. The story of the movie Lifeforce ends here. It is a sci-fi suspense horror film released in 1985, with makeup effects and model effects created by the team behind Alien at the time. Though crude by today's standards, at the time they were cutting edge. Director Tobe Hooper's imagination was bold, blending elements of vampires, aliens, space exploration, zombies, and Freudian psychology. Although none of these themes were deeply explored, and many audiences dismissed Lifeforce as nothing more than a B-movie, it cannot be denied that countless strange and spectacular sci-fi horror films that came after were influenced by it in one way or another.